This is a summary of all the things during the live stream the other day. They talked about the Pax West. There was a life-sized HLNA that you could interact with and ask questions to.
Hey guys, we're here at PAX and we're excited to see everybody and show off the Ark Survival Evolved Ultimate Edition on Nintendo Switch. I'm here with a very special guest.
Hi, I'm HLNA, your finned fractal friend from the future.
Hey HLNA, how do you like it here?
Remind me again, what era is this? Wait, don't tell me. Analyzing. Carbon levels, aerosols. Ew! Definitely Anthropocene.
Yeah, I guess so.
The food here is very strange. Where's the free code? Where's the battle tartar?
I don't know if we have any of that right now, but we got to get back to the stream. Just want to thank everybody for dropping by, and we're excited to see all of y'all.
Mind if I tag along? Kidding. I'm programmed to remain here. See you later, Survivor.
Sounds like both a great idea and a horrible idea at the same time, because I am afraid of some of the questions. Her voice lines are pre-recorded, so I think someone needs to ask her some of the most ridiculous things that they couldn't prepare a scripted answer for. They showed a bit of the event, and I just have to point out the wildcard hand sanitizer, as well as this lovely sign, which is definitely something she would say. It just looks like they're playing the regular version of the island. I don't think they were showing any new cinematic stuff or any of the dinosaur discovery thing. During the stream, they showed some of the new cinematics, as well as talked about how the game would work on the Switch. While I won't be talking much about that, because that is something I don't know much about, I would like to mention the dinosaur discovery, which was once called Young Explorers Mode. I'm wondering if it will be something similar to Ark Park. And while I'm outside of the target audience for this, I'm still really excited because more HLNA is always a good thing, and she will be narrating it. And they also showed the logo with baby dinosaurs, and I must say I really like the design for it. It also looks like the island in the background as well. It's supposed to be a simplified version for kids to learn dinosaur facts, which makes a lot of sense. Kids like dinosaurs, and some of them aren't ready to play Ark yet, so it's easily marketable. I know Ark probably wouldn't be the type of game I would have wanted to play as a kid. It also shows the schedule for all the story maps and when they will release. Island and Scorched Earth on October 25th. Aberration is December this year. And Extinction, Genesis Part 1 and 2 are sometime in 2023. The cutscenes and the cinematics will apparently connect to Ark 2 and also the series.
So these things and this content that we're adding to the game is just going to strengthen your connection with the characters that you already have, with the lore that you already know. It's just going to strengthen those things and make them add a lot more depth to them. So I'm really excited about that. And
the first cinematic that they showed was an introduction cutscene for the island, which is something that I think the game really needed. Something to show that yes, there is a story without giving away too much in the beginning. And it's a really good introduction. It features the one who waits talking to your character. It reminded me a lot of the teaser for Genesis 1. The one who waits, or Helena after her ascension, has a quote that makes it seem like there has been a long amount of time between her ascension and the beginning of your character's story. At the end, she tells you to find her, hinting towards the scene at the end of Extinction. And I really like this idea of adding more to your character's story and making them more involved in the plot from the beginning. I also love the images in the background because they are the original illustrations from the Explorer notes. Her first note is there, as well as two of the notes from her time studying the ocean, and then the Broodmother in the scene where the Iron Brotherhood fought it. And they are finally making Scorched Earth Ascension. And they showed it too. The first thing I noticed was that I always remember there being more arcs around the Earth than shown here, but maybe I'm just misremembering that. You get to see the broken moon, and there's still no explanation to how that happened. The most interesting thing is that you were initially supposed to go to a different arc. It's difficult to tell what it was. Maybe something with an environment similar to the island. Upon approaching that arc, you are immediately pulled away towards another one, which is the arc that Aberration takes place on. There's even this fancy glitch effect as you fall to the surface of the arc and into the caverns. You can hear Rockwell laughing at the end, indicating that he's the one who brought you there. Maybe he's just trying to make sure everyone goes to the aberration arc, or maybe he knows that your survivor is the one that Helena has been waiting for, because I think it's implied that the one who waits and Rockwell are able to talk to each other. They showed one of the voiced Explorer notes along with one of the dossiers. All of Helena and Rockwell's notes will be voiced as well as Helena's dossiers. They did not say if they would do the same for the other characters in the future. I really hope so, but maybe the other voice actors for the show might not want to do voices for the game. Maybe Santiago's notes will be, since Vin Diesel already voices the character in the game. And I am so excited to finally hear Helena's voice. We haven't gotten to hear much of human Helena, only her as the one who waits and also HLNA. She had one line in the teaser, I think. They showed her voicing all the information for the Rex. They also showed Rockwell Note 29. I think Rockwell's voice fits perfectly, and I'm so excited to hear more of them. I especially can't wait for the aberration notes.
That's pretty damn awesome, and of course Maddie just brings so much depth of soul and empathy and heart to this really just deeply lived portrayal of Helena Walker, is what I would say, and that warmth comes through in all those lines. So yeah, it's that duality, Helena's journey and Rockwell's journey, I think will come through much better when there's actual human beings portraying those lines and not just having to read them. And then the story cutscenes themselves are pretty cool. I won't spoil where they ultimately go, but there is a little bit of a character arc there and some developments that are kind of played out over those.
They also talked about Arc 2 and the animated series. And while I won't talk too much about the gameplay things, as that honestly isn't as interesting to talk about for me, I'll mention some things. They hinted at characters from Arc 1 returning again, and I'd assume that means in Arc 2. They've mentioned this before, and I really hope that means May and Diana have a chance to return.
Musical landscape, for sure.
One fun thing is, of course, we've been touching up Ark Survival Evolved, the game, a little bit as we've been going through this process, and felt that one of the things that we weren't entirely satisfied with on the original game as we kind of came to the end of our journey was some of the story, not the story itself, rather, but our ability to tell it within the game. That was, we felt we could have done that better. Certainly Arc 2, we will be doing that better. We felt there would be an opportunity at the end of the road to maybe just make that story portrayed in a more engaging manner, specifically by way of great voice talent and a little bit of connective tissue in the form of new cutscenes to help kind of tie those story threads together. You know, the story was there, but you had to work for it, right? And you still have to largely work for it. But now when you do, you get a more entertaining result, which is great voice acting, and then there's these story cutscenes. But cannot say enough good things for what Maddie Madden and David Tennant have done with the voice work.
They mentioned that there will be more chances to tell the story in Arc 2, and they mentioned that there would be a child protagonist. This is the first time that there has been a child protagonist in Arc, and Arc's world will be seen differently by a child. One of the references for Arc 2's soundtrack and Santiago's theme is the theme for Conan the Barbarian. They said that a major theme in Arc 2 is combat, and that they wanted to show that through music.
It's about incredible physical power, incredible, single-mindedness of purpose, if you will, willpower, being able to, not submit, and in fact dominate an incredibly harsh and dangerous world. And that we felt if we could kind of capture some of the power that not just Conan, but a lot of movies from that era were trying to portray, it would give a sense of what Arc 2 in a lot of ways is about, which is about combat. I mean, just to be quite blunt, like it's a significant point to have in Arc 2 a more engaging combat system, both for player-level combat and for dinosaur-level combat.
But they also have to convey the other part of Arc, the wonder of the dinosaurs. They aren't trying to focus on a realistic survival game. I'm not sure what that will mean for the survival aspects of the game. I've seen games before where it's like, oh, you have to have this much protein. So I'm assuming they're not going to do that for Arc. And honestly, I'm glad. Arc 2 will have a more primitive world compared to Arc 1, focusing on combat, especially with Santiago's perspective. But with Mika, Santiago's kid's perspective, there will be more themes of excitement and wonder. And then they talk about tech, which will be in Arc 2. That's really interesting to hear. I wonder if it'll be less involved in the gameplay and more with the themes and stuff. I didn't really expect it to be in the game that much, aside from background things. But it really does make sense that it will play a large part in the story, because they can't just forget about it. They said in Arc 2 it will be threatening, and they want to portray it as something beyond human understanding. And I am ready for that, because that's what it is. It has element, which is an alien thing. People shouldn't exactly understand it, they just used it, and they call it magical, but not necessarily in a good way.
It's magical, but not necessarily in a good way. And, like, you look at Thor, for example, and the tech in that is portrayed kind of magically. It's, beyond modern understanding. So maybe Thor's powers or Asgard's powers are technology-based, perhaps. But it's portrayed positively, ultimately. Rainbow bridges and bright colors, and it's kind of cool, right? But I think, like, the same idea, but like, sinister in a way. So yes, it's beyond our understanding, and yes, it is technology, but it does not seem pleasant, and it does not seem like something that you should dabble with if you don't know what the heck you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of a slight shift. It certainly was a theme in Arc 1, but I don't think it was visually really expressed in Arc 1. I think that's visually now kind of more clear in Arc 2, and is really plays into the themes of Arc 2, and I think ultimately will play into the music as well. And Gareth, like even in a TV show when tech comes up, we've tried to portray it in more of that manner of a bit of a sinister aspect to what it might mean. And I think in Arc 2, that's actually incredibly important.
I do think that's an important part of it, too. Think of Rockwell, or what happened to the Aberrant Arc, of what happened to Earth. And they say tech will be more sinister in the show as well. I'm really interested in seeing how that will work, because a lot of the stuff in Aberration with the survivors from the future and in Extinction with mechs makes it seem like a good thing. But Rockwell finding tech, an element in the show, could be a way to show that it is not entirely good. They also mentioned something called the dens, which are described as fight arenas similar to the missions in Genesis. They also mentioned Brontosaurus, so this could be its new design in Arc 2. Speaking of new designs, I'm wondering if a lot of the dinosaurs that look different is either due to them having evolved and changed over time, or even just the fact that Arc 2 is going to be in a different style compared to Arc 1. We mentioned that it would be in a more realistic style, just in terms of the visuals and the way the environment looks. So that could be why the creatures do look different.
It's like, okay, we've established it. How can we develop it so it has way more impact 2 or 3 or 4 episodes down the line? And
musical themes in the show paralleling character growth and character development has been an incredibly important part of the show's musical development, is trying to parallel and express character development through how their music develops across multiple episodes.
They had an interview with Gareth Coker, the composer of the soundtrack, and showed part of the soundtrack for the show. And while they only gave us one still image of May and Helena, it was still exciting to see. But let me talk about the image. The lighting made me think it might be from the same scene as this one. There they were in a town, and here they are inside. But I was also wondering if this was May's house. But it seems like such a big building compared to how she described it in her notes. Helena has her book as well, which makes me wonder if this is when Helena studied May's tamed creatures. Additionally, here May doesn't have her armor. That makes me think that this is not a scene where the two are in danger. May and Helena both look sad or concerned though, just like in the other image. Maybe something happened in this town? A new Legion attack, for example. Or maybe they are talking about their past. The song itself seems more triumphant at times than sad. There's probably also parts of May and Helena's theme in this. On SoundCloud, it's called A Path That Few Can Walk, and that probably means something, but right now I'm not entirely sure, and that's probably something that I could talk more about once the show releases. It's also described as music from one of the episodes of Arc the Animated Series, from among Helena and Mayon's journeys together. And now that I look at the lighting, it seems more bright and sunny here, rather than orange and on fire. They didn't say what episode it was from. Gareth Coker said that he is 75% done with the music, which is about 5 hours. He specifically mentioned the Broodmother theme too, when talking about adapting the original Arc themes for the show. It'll be recorded by a live orchestra, and he's been able to explore different areas of what Arc means in the show, especially considering that most of Arc's music is combat music. So now he gets to make music for the emotional side of Arc. And while there definitely was some of that in the game, the show has a bunch of characters who all get their own themes. He mentions using character themes from the game and adapting them to the show using Rockwell as an example. and Rockwell's garden themes have to be one of my favorite parts of the soundtrack. In the show, there will be a lot more time to develop character themes compared to the game where each track only lasts a few minutes.
It's really fun with the IP to be able to play in those, the idea of, I think, really the story that we're able to tell is like it's all humanity. It covers the entire expanse of humanity, everybody now thrown into this fight to save Earth in the far future, and everybody across time and culture has something to bring to that fight that's unique to them and who they are. And some, are less than helpful, and some are actively unhelpful. But everybody's kind of bringing their place, their culture, and their time to their, second life, as it were, on the arcs, and seeing that kind of play out in terms of those character interactions is really fun. But also seeing them in their historical setting gives you really the understanding of who really they are and why they are the way they are, and maybe any issues they still have, they feel they need to address, that kind of stuff.
This is one of my favorite aspects of ARC, and one thing that I think makes it really interesting. That's why you get invested in the story, because each character has their own perspective and ideas that helps them or even hurts them in their journeys. And I think exploring each character's identities, relationships with the arcs, the story, and each other, as well as how who they were in their past life affects how they are in their second life on the arcs. They grow and develop over time, and they deal with personal conflicts, as well as the grand plot of saving Earth and surviving in a strange world. And these personal conflicts in past lives make them the right people to do so, because of who they are as people. I think that's one of the main themes of ARC, and one of my favorite parts of a science fiction story too. The grandness of the plot intertwined with the personal stories perfectly. In science fiction, we have robots and space travel and apocalyptic stories, but we also have characters who are people just like ourselves that we can relate to and that we want to succeed. They said there will be a lot of flashbacks to the characters' backstories, so there are themes that are appropriate for the different eras that the show takes place in. And in those scenes, the characters will be speaking in the languages of that era and culture, which is really cool, and I'm so glad they decided to do that. I think it will add a lot to the story and setting, and I hope it shows the quality of the show. They didn't have to do that, but they did. So I really hope that they do it well. And it's also another way to show how the arcs translate languages. Each person hears everyone else talking in their own language, but that's only on the arcs. One thing I am a bit disappointed to hear is that the scenes in ancient Rome are not in Latin. There will be some Latin, but not in the entire scene. They mentioned working with consultants and researchers to make sure they got the languages and cultures right. I do hope that they did a good job with that research, and hope that is an indication of the quality of the writing and script. There will be an OST version of the soundtrack, 7 hours of music. They said there will be probably 2 versions, a best of, but also releasing all the music for every episode each time, and that excites me for 2 reasons. A lot of the time, shows don't release their soundtrack. I look for show soundtracks because I liked them in the show, and then couldn't find anything. Other times, it's only some of the music that has been released. And you can just tell that the length of the soundtrack doesn't match the length of scenes with music. And Gareth Coker's music is just so good that it deserves to be heard. If there's 14 half-hour episodes, about 7 hours of music seems right. I assume there will be some parts of the show that just doesn't have soundtrack. It probably won't be constant music. There's one large section of the Jurassic World Dominion movie, for example, that has no music and very little dialogue, just sound effects and stuff. One of my favorite shows has a moment that's very important to the plot, but doesn't have a soundtrack. The majority of this show has a dramatic soundtrack that's very good, but in this scene there's nothing at first. The characters are making a decision that will affect the entire story, and so the lack of music in this scene of a show that usually has amazing music really emphasizes the conversation they are having and the importance of it. As the scene progresses, the music is slowly and quietly added back into the scene. Secondly, this might imply that the episodes will be released weekly, or at least not all at once. Personally, I would prefer that. It would allow for more discussion and speculation between episodes, as well as enough time to process each one and the emotions of it. If it's watched at first all at once, then the most memorable parts might be the beginning and the end. You would remember how it began, and oftentimes the dramatic ending, or the teaser for the next season. And that's what people will be talking about. But also, binge watching a show is just really fun and a different experience from watching an episode weekly. So if they release it weekly, you could have both, because once it's all completed, you can just go back and watch the entire thing again, noticing things you might not have seen before, or things that you might only notice when watching all at once. things from the first episode that make sense when viewed with the context of the previous episodes. They could also do something like Arcane, another video game show, did. When I heard about that, my first thought was, what if the ARC show does this? And then I thought that the ARC show should do that. Each week they release 3 episodes. Now the show might have to be a bit different since each set of episodes was its own act. Sort of a trilogy. I don't know if there's an easy way to split 14 episodes, or even ARC's story into 3 acts, since Arcane only had 9. If I were, I'd have character introductions and the beginning notes as the first, the discovery of the artifacts, and the war between the Sharks and the Legion as the second, and then the rest of the story as the third. And there seems to be a growing pattern of streaming services releasing episodes weekly rather than all at once. I hope the quality of the writing and the script matches the quality of the music. While this could just be them trying to advertise the show, a lot of the interviews makes it seem like it will. Although I have seen things where the plot isn't great, but the composer definitely had fun with the music. I don't think amazing music can save a show with bad writing, at least for me. However, it can make the viewing experience a lot better.
I remember one thing you said at the beginning of when we started doing the TV show. We're like, you're only really allowed to use the main arc theme like once per episode because it's so easy to rely on it. It's so powerful.
Yeah. I think that was it would have been very tempting to try and thread it into every big moment, but its power is such that when you hear it, you want it to really mean something. You're going to remember that moment more than anything else.
One of the things that he mentioned was that he could only use the ARC theme once per episode. I did notice the ARC theme, or at least a theme from the game, in the part of the soundtrack that they played here. So maybe this is the one time he uses it in that episode.
I also had another rule that I think Gareth broke once or twice. I think I told him about this recently. I said I never really want to hear the ARC theme played in a downbeat way. Because there's a few ways where he plays like dun 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 dun, and I'm like, oh no, not that majestic music, kind of played to in a depressing way. Thankfully, it's only done like once, I think, in the show, and I think it actually works in the context. But I was like, yeah, let's not do that one again.
And he also said that he couldn't use it in a depressing way, although ended up doing it once. And I am glad, because I like it when themes that are usually used with or introduced with a certain tone are used in a completely different way. I think it's interesting, and I'm excited for that moment in the show. He says it works in context, and so I wonder what that will be. An important character moment? When they see the arcs in space, and then what happened to Earth? The death of Maze Raptor?
I'm going to spoil something about the show. There's only one place in the first season where we play it all the way through end to end, like the full theme, like the main menu theme, all of it basically. And when it's played that way, it really works, because I knew that sequence is where that should really hit. Like, yes, the melody is worked into many other places, but when you hear it in all of its grandeur played end to end, it really needs to be saying something very specific about what the arc is and what it means to the people on it, to the people watching the show and the players who played it, and it has to really resonate story-wise what it's portraying at that time. Because again, if you use it all over the place, you just wear out that power. So I think where we've got it planned, because it's actually not an episode Gareth has yet composed, it's really going to it's going to work. It's going to be fun.
And there's also only one place in the first season where they play the theme all the way through. I am excited to hear that combined with the scene. They revealed the new dinosaur, the Carcharodontosaurus, which is probably the last dinosaur in Arc 1. While they didn't say what map they'd be adding it to, it looks like the Genesis 1 bog in the background. Other maps have environments like that, for example, one of the realms in Fjordur, but there are bloodstalkers in the background, so it is giving me hope that this creature will be added to the canon, even if it is just a simulation. However, this wouldn't be the first time they've added creatures in the background that didn't actually appear. And there's also the strange detail of the raptors looking at a glow bug, which is not present in the bog biome. They also showed the dossier, but that doesn't automatically confirm it as canon, as many creatures from the non-story maps do have dossiers written by Helena. There was also some more information about it on the website. While I won't be talking about its abilities, I'll probably save that for later if it ends up being canon. One thing to mention is that it says it will make its way onto the arcs later this year, implying that it will be on multiple arcs.
You guys are keeping me busy between the animated show and Arc 2.
We love monopolizing Gareth's time because, you know, when you have mana from heaven in the form of music, you just want to grab as much of it as you can. So yes, we should make a theme for every dinosaur in the game. Like whenever you encounter a T-Rex, there should be like, bam, 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 there's a T-Rex theme. I think that's a great idea.
How many dinosaurs are in the game?
Well, you know, lots eventually. If we think we like don't have enough ARC stuff, we make more ARC stuff to keep it busy.
Yeah.
Hey Gareth, Ultimate Survivor Edition story sequences.